The first full week of the 58th legislative session is now complete, and lawmakers have already taken action on an Open Meetings Act that will have statewide implications. Tonight we have team coverage for you, beginning with a recap of Governor Kevin Stitt's third State of the State speech, which recounted his accomplishments and priorities for 2021 and beyond. Of course, Democrats and even some members of his own party have their own ideas. So let's begin with the governor's address and then get in-depth reaction from both sides of the aisle.
We successfully opened our economy on June 1st and safely restarted most schools in August. It appears now other states are waking up to the stark reality of double-digit unemployment, huge budget deficits, and the fact that our kids are safer at school than anywhere else. They're realizing we took the smart approach in Oklahoma. Our 7-day average of new cases is down 45% from its peak. Our hospitalizations are also down 35%. We can see the finish line in our fight against this virus. But rather than coast our way in, let's continue together with the final sprint. Can you imagine being a first grader trying to learn to read on Zoom? Distance learning is perfectly fine for some students, but when we force it on everyone, it widens achievement gaps and jeopardizes our future as a top 10 state. Our kids deserve the option to be in their classrooms. By not giving our parents and children an option for in-person learning, schools have tied their hands. With Medicaid expansion now in our Constitution, this is the perfect opportunity to reimagine healthcare delivery in Oklahoma. It's time to focus on outcomes and not just paying invoices. 40 states have found managed care is the best way forward. The U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in McGirt versus Oklahoma questions the sovereignty of the state as we've known it since 1907. We need to resolve the many unanswered questions from this ruling. I've invited the leaders of Oklahoma's sovereign tribes to join together and work with the state of Oklahoma. It is critical, while embracing the tribal heritage of many Oklahomans, that we don't lose sight of the fact that we are all Oklahomans. What we need is more taxpayers, not more taxes. I'm proud to say Oklahoma is open for business, and we're seeing results. More companies are looking to relocate to our state than ever before. We've been aggressive. We're reaching out to companies in states that are keeping businesses locked down and dictating their citizens' personal freedoms. I encourage us all today to renew our promise to the people of our great state. Our decisions have consequences, and as we go, society follows. Let's lead Oklahoma to becoming a top 10 state, and let's deliver on the people's agenda. The turnaround Oklahomans demanded is well on its way. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's Democratic leaders had a much different view of the Stitt administration's response to the pandemic, and they shared their thoughts with the media later that afternoon. Jason Doyle continues our team coverage with more on what they had to say.
The House Democratic Caucus says the governor's speech and actions on COVID-19 have fallen short of the mark, and they explained why at a news conference in front of St. Anthony Hospital, a 5-minute drive from the Capitol.
We also want to bring the focus from today's pomp and circumstance that we saw at the Capitol back to the most important issue at hand, and that is our state's pandemic response. Because the reality is that many, many Oklahomans are still suffering.
This session, there are 82 Republicans and 19 Democrats in the Oklahoma House, with 38 Republicans, 9 Democrats, and 1 open seat currently in the Oklahoma Senate. Republicans have a veto-proof supermajority in both chambers, but that won't deter Democrats from staking out their positions on pandemic policy.
But I've kept my promise to follow the data and make the right decisions for Oklahoma at the right time. And now we are months and months ahead of other states. Our June unemployment rate was 5th lowest in the country, 40% lower than the national average, and 60% lower than New York. Because of that, almost 100,000 more Oklahomans were back to work compared to the national average.
The governor used the speech to outline his administration's accomplishments during the pandemic. However, the Democrats are looking for something a little more.
We would have enacted a statewide mask mandate. We've been calling for that for many, many months. We've called for a bipartisan, expert-led panel to lead the state's response instead of politicians.
House Democrats also take issue with the governor's approach to COVID and getting kids back into the classroom. Stitt feels Oklahoma schools are on the right track.
Because I'm committed to getting all kids back in their classrooms, I made sure we prioritize teachers to get this vaccine. Many teachers over 65 have been vaccinated already, and many more teachers will be eligible this month.
Two of Tulsa's state representatives don't think the governor has done enough to make schools safe for students, teachers, and staff.
If the teachers and kids and families in Tulsa had a governor that truly cared about their health care and their education, their safety, they would have been in school months ago. But they don't have that. And so leaders in Tulsa are being responsible because our hospital capacity doesn't exist because of the governor's policies.
I've received 2 of the calls where there were 2 sisters that were teachers in Tulsa Public Schools. One of the teachers died. I had to take that call. I had to deal with that grief that family has to endure.
Stitt called out the Tulsa School District specifically, hoping the state's second largest school district would follow the example of Tulsa's suburbs.
It's now been 325 days since Tulsa students in 4th through 12th grades have been allowed to be in their classrooms. 325 days. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, the rest of the Tulsa Metro has been safely in session most of this year.
Representative Melissa Provenzano says not so fast.
And just days after the governor compared the urban area to surrounding districts, those surrounding districts shut down and went back to virtual.
Because schools have had to innovate to keep instruction going during the pandemic, Stitt believes now is a good time for educational reforms, including the state's funding formula. His issue with the formula is how it's based on a school's highest enrollment in a 3-year period. Stitt says it creates ghost students in districts where students have left and enrolled in a different school.
There are more than 55,000 ghost students in our funding formula right now. That means we're allocating close to $200 million of your tax dollars to students who don't exist.
Provenzano believes the governor misunderstands how the funding formula works.
To thread on this gauntlet of misunderstanding about what a ghost student is was embarrassing. And as state leaders, we need to understand what the funding formula does, why it does it that way, and to be able to apply it correctly.
She adds other states actually look to Oklahoma when it comes to funding public education.
We're known across the nation for our funding formula, and it holds up over time. So we'll be working to educate and hopefully lift up the truth of the situation.
The governor can expect the Democrats to resist his funding formula reform as it makes its way through the legislative process. Jason Doyle, the Oklahoma News Report.